Aloha and welcome to Music 102, Module 4, Session 2, Concepts of Cultural Exchange, Cook Islands Music and Dance. You might remember in our last session talking about the music of Tahiti that I talked about intra-regional cultural exchange. And so that brings to us an interesting chicken or egg paradigm. I think most people in most cultures have heard about that old riddle, which came first, the chicken or the egg. And of course the argument is a circular argument because you couldn't have a chicken without an egg for it to hatch from, but you couldn't have an egg without a chicken to lay the egg. And so it's a way of saying we can't really tell which came first. So this applies to cultural exchange, which some people refer to as borrowing, others refer to as stealing, you stole from our culture, appropriation, or co-opting are two maybe more academic terms for this process. But for instance, take a look at these pictures. In the top picture, we have Cook Island drummers. We have some drummers playing larger slit log idiophones and one drummer playing a smaller slit log idiophone. And then in the bottom photo we have some Tahitian style of drumming where the to'eres are standing up on end, and we have the fa'atete and the modern pahu drum. So it's very clear the cultural exchange has been happening between the Society Islands, where Tahiti is, and the Cook Islands for many centuries. And so that process has come to become a contested academic turf, meaning there are debates about its history. So if you ever hear in a college kind of discussion academic turf, that idea, it just means that sociologists have their own academic turf, the way a gang will have certain turf, and the anthropologists shouldn't come onto this turf, and there's all kinds of odd ideas about debates about historical things and cultural things. So instrument types, musical genres, and characteristic dance movements are very similar between Tahiti in the Society Islands and Rarotonga from the Cook Islands. Now, as we discussed in the last session, Tahiti eventually became the European romantic icon for the exotic South Pacific. The way the women danced, the way they dressed, things like that, the drumming. And Cook Islanders, especially the Rarotongans, resent the lack of credit for their cultural contributions, and they feel the things that Tahiti are being recognized for, that they deserve to be recognized for those things. So let's learn a little bit more about Cook Islands geography and society. And I'm sorry I'm not always including maps in my discussions. If you're unsure about any of the locations of the cultures we've been talking about, you certainly have ways to find those maps on the internet. But here I provide a map for you so you can see a little bit about the Cook Islands group. There are 15 islands covering only 241 square kilometers of total land area. So Oahu, where I am right now, where Brigham Young University Hawaii is located, is not a very large island. It's maybe 60 miles from end to end. And the total land area of all the islands of Cook Islands is only 1/5 that size. So not much land. But that land is spread out over thousands of square kilometers of ocean. Now you can see on the map there's a northern group and a southern Cook, or southern group. They call them the Northern Cooks and the Southern Cooks. Only about 20,000 resident population. Now just to give you a basis of comparison, there's about 178,000 in Tahiti. And on the island of Oahu alone in Hawaii, there are 900,000 people, including the city of Honolulu, of course. So 20,000 in all the islands, and of course many more Cook Islanders in diaspora, which we'll talk more about. Here we go, 60,000 expatriate Cook Islanders living overseas. And just one example, there's more Cook Islanders living in New Zealand, and probably, I haven't heard the facts on this, but probably more Cook Islanders living in the city of Auckland, New Zealand, than are remaining in the Cook Islands today. Now the capital island, so to speak, is Rarotonga, and the Cook Islands have maintained a close political alliance with New Zealand. English is widely spoken there, but Cook Islands Maori is the traditional language of the people. One of the things that's very, very important in the Cook Islands, as elsewhere, is the process of Christianization. Now, in the Cook Islands, it was done most predominantly by the London Missionary Society, or the LMS Church. So if you ever hear or see any discussions of the LMS Church, this is the one they're talking about. It is a Protestant denomination. And John Williams, in the picture here, is often known as the Apostle of the Pacific. He was very energetic in sharing the gospel message with the best of intentions to his brothers and sisters as he saw it in the Pacific Islands. He brought Christianity to the Cook Islands in 1823, and it grew from there. After he established the LMS Church in the Cook Islands, he took Cook Islander converts and they accompanied the British missionaries and went to Samoa. So there's a very strong connection between with the LMS Church in Samoa. I should mention that because of this process, there was also cultural exchange between the Cook Islands and Samoa. And for instance, the pate drum came to Samoa from the Cook Islands. Now the main denomination in the Cook Islands and Samoa today are offshoots of the LMS Church. They go by some different names today. For instance, in Samoa, the LMS Church is now known as the CCCS. Now let's talk about some representative music genres here in the Cook Islands. And the photo shows you 5 pate drums, which look very similar to toere drums in Tahiti, but they're played differently, as you will see in here. Now before I get into some of the specific traditional styles here and traditional instruments, I thought it might be helpful for you to get a bit of an overview of the contemporary Cook Islands music scene, and then we'll kind of build on that. So we have a clip from a New Zealand television program that kind of highlights Polynesian music and culture in New Zealand, and this is a segment that's talking about the Cook Islands music scene in New Zealand.
Music has been a feature of the Auckland Pacific Islands music scene for many years. Just think Brother Love, Tyson and the Cabin Breed Boys. However, there's a concern that fewer young people are being inspired to carry it on. Our own Cook Islander John Utanga went to find out what's going on.
Friday night in Mangere and the Malaiola Hall is humming. It's the night of the Cook Islands Mini Music Festival, and artists have come from the islands, Australia and around New Zealand. The event's been organised by Heimana Music Limited, the new face of Vaimutu Records. The promoter's keen to showcase Cook Islands culture.
You know, our artists and our musicians should be brought together to interact with each other. Maybe once in a year, twice in a year, if it's possible, and see, you know, what we can do about our music to keep it going, you know.
Come to markets like this around Auckland and you'll hear the sounds of the ukulele string. It's been like this for almost the past 2 decades, but some of our tried and true artists of the past are getting a bit long in the tooth. So the question is, where's our next generation of artists coming from? Who's stepping up to the plate?
It's amazing how fast it has changed. Going back 20-something years ago, compare then and now, there's a huge difference, big difference. When Brother Love came in 1996 to do his first album, he also pushed the music in another direction. Where we go from now, I don't know.
I got my elbow in the windowsill, hand on my face, looking out to the world.
The hip-hop and R&B sound seems to have captured many young Cook Islanders in New Zealand, Australia and especially in the islands, where it appears to be impacting on the local music scene.
Even though I live in Raro and it's supposed to be the roots of where our music has developed, there isn't as much local island sounds as you get here.
The ones here, they're catching up with our music. You see all the local bands here now, new bands coming up, the new young ones playing our local strings, whereas back home you don't find many new bands coming up actually. It's more like the same old school, like probably us, eh?
In Rarotonga, one young artist who's decided to buck the trend in recent years is 27-year-old Tara Kovai, who released her first self-produced album last year. She's made a conscious effort to reach out to a younger audience.
I've got cousins who are young and they turn to the Western, you know? Don't like the, local music. Nah, stuff it, you know? So that was another aim for me in this album, to just add a bit of the beat and the language and just incorporate, just slowly introduce it to the young ones. The young ones are my main focus,
Over the years, music producers have grappled with innovations to make the music more appealing. When Brother Love burst onto the scene in 1996, producers fused his blues-heavy vocal sound with the ukulele strings, proving a big hit. In recent years, the music remix has proved popular, but it was innovation of a different kind which was the biggest revelation.
I had this vision, It's like a voice is saying to me, why don't you go back to the roots? It's what people are looking for. They're missing the power of our culture, of our music, from where we come from. That's how Virgin Voyage came about. It's like it takes me back home to the others. With the drums, the imminatory. It gives you the spirit of being home and who you are. You go far into the world, and all of a sudden this music takes you back home with mum and dad.
But is there the same passion for music among young Cook Islanders? The New Zealand experience is yes. Young bands like the Tapunui Motions and youngsters like 20-year-old Lindsay Unuia, a fresh addition to the Cabin Bred Boys, a young man who grew up in his culture.
My grandpa brought me up, and at the time he was taking the Tongaro College cultural group. I was always there watching practices, so it pretty much started from there and I never stopped there. We all know that the Caucasian influences culture is pretty high. It's starting to grow now, with the likes of having Vaimutu and Long John Productions, push their music out, and us young ones are starting to bring it in. And we just enjoy it, and we're starting to sing along with it. And then next minute, we're starting to form our own band. So I think, if they push it out more, our music more, we'll just start to, develop it from there.
In the meantime, Cook Islands music is at a crossroads. Artists in the islands, many of whom earn a living playing the hotel and restaurant circuit, feel the winds of change. But New Zealand-based producers and artists aren't so sure.
And I have no doubt that the Cook Island kids living in the Cook Islands are different to the ones here. One thing for sure, why they don't do it? Because the older musicians are not playing the music. They're focusing on Papa music, the rock and rolls, the reggae, to suit the hotel, the scene where they are. So, how do they think the kids are going to be inspired?
In my own honest opinion, our music industry, it's at a point of time now I think it's going to branch out. We've seen already, the influences of our other Pacific neighbours that have now taken giant leaps, probably more bigger leaps than the Cook Islands in comparison. But I think we're not prone to remain in this area for long. I think there's only going to be a matter of time before we also take the giant leap and join our cousins from throughout the Pacific in the area of music.
And if you want to find out more about the Cook Islands music rage featured in that story, just go to our website.
Now, the reason I thought that would be helpful to us at this point in the discussion is because you get to hear some of the Cook Islanders' attitudes about music and the way to pay respect to the traditional music, but to keep moving forward and to create music that's appealing to a wide range of ages and audience types.